Okay, so today we're going to talk about microaggressions and a type of microaggression in particular. Specifically, when somebody says to you some version of, oh, you're not like normal black people at all. Now, what you're going to get from this episode is so important because what we're not aware of is quite how that impacts us and how what we are making that type of microaggression mean is not serving us. So I want to talk to that today. And at the end of this episode, you're going to go from feeling that this is something that completely undermines you and disempowers you to feeling and knowing that it's something that you can use, that you can make it serve you. You can use it to your advantage. You can use it to empower you. Okay, that's what I'm offering for you in this episode. So right now, let's talk about what the exact experience is for you. For me, the first time I had this experience, I was at primary school. I can't remember the exact age I was, but I went to an all-white primary school from the age of 6, 5 or 6, and obviously the friends I made there, they were all white. Everybody I met there was white. And at a certain point, I remember exactly where I was. I can really picture it. I remember the faces of the friends who said it, and they were friends. The word microaggression didn't exist then. This was the 80s. They didn't know it was a microaggression. I wouldn't have known to call it a microaggression. Of course, I felt it like a microaggression. And for those of you who aren't actually as sure about what that means or how you would know it's a microaggression, I like to think of it as being the equivalent of the sort of tiny cuts, like the little wounds. Sometimes they're bigger actually, but it's more the smaller things. So it falls short of direct or overt racism, but it is like racism in the form of tiny little cuts all over you, right? That you feel and they build up. Okay. So there I was, maybe 8 or 9-year-old Caroline, surrounded by all of these white peers at school and my white friends. And they turned to me and they said, wow, Caroline, you're not like normal black people at all. You're quite nice, you're quite smart, and you're quite funny. I particularly remember that bit. I'm saying I'm quite funny. I never think about myself as funny, so I really appreciated that. But the point was, they thought they were giving me a compliment. They were telling me that I was nice, I was smart, I was funny. But of course, beneath that, not very far beneath the surface of that, was actually the very offensive suggestion that as a black person, I was neither smart nor nice nor funny, that these were traits that just you didn't find in black people. So they had a perception of black people. They had a perception of belief about what it means to be black and who black people are. And they noticed, oh, hang on, before I say what they noticed, that perception, and this is the key bit, was a negative one. That's the difference. It was the negative perception. And so what they did was they noticed that I didn't fit that stereotype that they had of black people, and therefore felt they would quote unquote compliment me by telling me how I was different to this perception. So I want to ask you, what has been your experience of this? Have you had someone literally directly say, oh, that's you're not like normal black people, or you're not like a black person at all? Perhaps they've said that in a way that's meant to be clothed as a compliment, but of course you experience it in the same way I did, as perhaps shaming, as disempowering, certainly as offensive, right? Or it could be that the words that use are more along the lines of, oh, but you're very articulate. Oh, you're very well spoken, or you're very well presented. Like all of that type of comment, it's all very similar. And so, as I said, how we experience it is like shame, or it's humiliating, right? It's wounding. That's why when I think of microaggressions, it's wounding. So if this is you, I invite you as you listen to this, as you watch this, if you're watching the video, to really think about how that's made you feel. And here's what happens. Our brain goes straight to, oh, well, this is racist. This is a microaggression. How am I supposed to progress in an environment where this is how they perceive black people? Like, this is where your brain wants to go. And I know this because I hear it. I know this because I see it talked about. I read about it. It is held up, like microaggressions like this are held up as being symptomatic of the deeper rooted evil and problem of inequality and of systemic bias. And that is absolutely the case, and a very valid argument and the right argument to be making about the change that needs to happen in institutions, in organizations, in firms, in the world, 100%. And then there's what happens for you at an individual level, at a personal level. So there's what it means at a systemic level and the change that absolutely must happen in order to create more inclusive and diverse environments. Of course, I know I don't need to preach that to you. I'm preaching to the converted. That, of course, needs to happen. And it needs to happen so that people like you and like me and like us do not have this experience of feeling shamed, of feeling less than, of being stereotyped, of being pigeonholed. And what comes with that, having barriers and bias that block our success and our progress. So that is yes, and I don't want to touch that. What I do want to touch and what I do want to speak to is your personal experience, what you make it mean, how you respond when somebody says something like that to you, how you react or don't react when you overhear something like that, which can be even worse, okay? Overhearing a microaggression or a racist slur like that. I want to speak to your experience, because right now you're having that thought when you hear that it's the system is racist, or your boss might be racist, or the group, or it's not inclusive here, and all of and what comes up are all the reasons why, and how this is evidence of the fact that you can't progress within this industry. Yeah. So you take the microaggression as evidence that you can't progress. And this is what we do with all of the microaggressions, with any number of them. It feeds our understanding that it's harder to progress and that we can't progress, okay? And what I want to reflect to you right now and in this episode, and what I want to offer you an alternative to, is the result that you create by having, staying with that thought, by having a microaggression, like you're not like black people, having that thought, holding on to it and making it mean that you can't progress in this industry. Because what happens is, if you make it mean that, how you feel is completely disempowered. How you feel is almost certainly frustrated, maybe upset, angry even. You feel, I know this, I've had a feeling of not enough, less than. It is absolutely a trigger to your imposter syndrome when you experience a microaggression that can make you feel like you're not enough, that you're insufficient, that you don't belong, you're in the wrong place. Yeah? And then what happens? You react in one of two ways. Either it's something like the anger that leads you to be more vocal or put your efforts into diversity initiatives, steer you into more environments where you're surrounded by people who look like you, environments that feel safe. That's where you direct your attention, your focus. That's where you network, right? So here's what I want to offer. You either react to it from the place of anger or frustration, from that type of emotion, or you react to it in a way that is you withdrawing, you playing small, you minimizing. So one of the reactions or responses is to be more vocal and to lean out, because you're leaning out of the white world in which you are in and feeling like you don't belong, being made to feel less than. You lean out of that. I've talked about leaning out before. Lean out of that and retreat to the sort of safety of our community, right? or you just make yourself small and minimize. So you stay in this white world and in this culture, in this environment, but you make yourself small so you don't seize the opportunities, you don't put your hand up, you don't speak up in meetings. Yeah, that feels so hard from a place of not enough, from a place of shame often, from a place of embarrassment, from a place of humiliation, frustration, self-consciousness. And when those two things are how you show up, like you might do one or the other, you might be the one who really dives into the diversity initiative, or you dive into being an activist. That's, I think, the word I was looking for. Or you're the one that minimizes and plays small. Whichever one of those, the outcome is you don't show up to your potential in your role. You don't show up to your potential in your conversations with your peers. You don't show up to your potential when opportunities come your way. You don't even necessarily notice opportunities when they come your way. So the whole thing results in you performing, and I don't mean performing in a loaded way, but the way you behave and the way you act is so much less than your potential in that environment, in that moment. You are less than in your actions and in your behaviors than you are capable of being in any environment, even an environment where it's a white world, you've got white peers, and the culture feels like it doesn't include you. The culture feels like you don't belong there. And the result of that is that you don't progress, you don't fulfill your potential. What I've tried to outline for you there is the connection between how you think about that microaggression, you're not like black people at all, how you think about it, how it makes you feel, those negative emotions, and how from those negative emotions, it means that you show up as less than you are. You are disempowered. You show up as if you have no power, as if you are powerless, as if the circumstances are bigger than you and the only thing you can do is fight to change the circumstances or make yourself small and hide almost from those circumstances. And how, as a result, you are the one that loses out. You are the one that misses out on the opportunity to progress, on the opportunity to fulfill your potential. So this is what I've described here is where I see so many of you being right now, stuck in any one of those levels, like either stuck in the feelings that I've described or stuck in those actions, the being the activist or the withdrawing. Just a word by way of caveat. None of this, what I'm saying, is about those behaviors or those responses being wrong. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I am not saying, I don't want you to use this episode against you, right? The message I'm going to share with you is not saying that to go out and be an activist and try and change this is wrong, is the wrong response, is not what you should do. Absolutely, let's change the world any way we can. I'm like wholeheartedly in support of you campaigning, throwing your heart into whatever way it is that you can contribute to making a change in the world. What I am saying is, well, what I'm offering you is for you to see how, when that is our only response, it can be so limiting for us to be caught up in trying to change the circumstances, because they will change, but the changing other people's behavior, changing the things outside of us is so much harder and so much less, can you say that? And so much less within our control. So it's one way. I want to offer you another way. It's a way you can do as well. It's a way you can choose instead. But the important thing and what's so valuable and so essential about this other way is how it will make you feel, how you will show up when you feel this new way, and critically, the results you will create, the impact you will have, the difference it will make to who you are in your career, in your role, and ultimately within the industry and the impact that you have on it that way. For me, the choice I'm offering you is one between feeling disempowered and less than when you've experienced this microaggression, to one where you feel empowered and more than. I want to like take it that far. You feel so empowered, you feel more than. And I don't mean it makes you a better person than your white peers. This is never about that. It's never about you being better than. But what it is about is you being so elevated, so much in your power, so connected to your potentials, showing up at such a high level that you are bigger than your circumstances in that way, bigger than those around you who say things like, you're not like Black people at all. You're very articulate. Ooh, you're very well presented. Things like that. Okay, so there's the two options. I want to offer you a more empowered way forward, particularly if, some of you will be listening to this and thinking, okay, identifying with being the activist, but so many of you I know are there feeling utterly powerless in your role. You want to just be able to show up and do a good job. I spoke to so many of you during COVID, and this was one of the things that has been, it keeps coming up over and over again, and it's a challenging thing to address, I know, within organizations, within firms, because particularly those that do and are trying to do something about the culture, it's where what we want is to be able to just be normal, have a normal experience of going to work, not feeling terrible, not feeling self-conscious or conscious even of our race or ethnicity, right? And be able to just get our jobs done, without the external circumstances mirroring back to us that we don't belong, and without like the internal feeling that we don't belong or we're not good enough. We just want to be able to do a good job. And so you can feel so powerless in the face of a microaggression like this. It just can make you feel so small. And you are the ones I want to talk to. You're the one that is going to have the transformation from what I'm going to teach you in this episode or this session. So here's what I want to offer. Are you ready? I want to offer that the only issue, the only thing you need to worry about when somebody says to you, you are not like Black people at all, or you're very smart for a Black person, right? Or some awful variation of that. When somebody says that to you, the only thing you have to do, you don't have to change the world, you don't have to change them, you don't have to change the circumstances, you don't have to sit there and think, I'm powerless and feel powerless in the face of this, in the face of a culture that won't change, that won't accept you. All you have to do is change your thought. Change your thought about what they said. Change your thought about those words. Change how you think about it. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I talk about the change, the transformation that you can create by changing your thoughts, changing how you think about yourself in the room, from I'm not the only one to I'm the first. So this right here, what I'm teaching in this session, is exactly that. It's a be the first transformation. So what I want to offer you is that the way you come back from a comment like that, the way you respond to a microaggression like that, the way you take your power back, I like to talk about that, the way you step into your power, the way you can show up bigger than before, feel better than before, use that microaggression to empower you, is you change your thought, right? Okay. What thought, I hear you ask? Change my thought to what, Caroline? Here's what I want to offer you. Instead of thinking about what it says about where you work and the environment, think about what that comment says about you. Here's what I want to offer. When somebody says you're not like Black people, the thought I invite you to have, the thought I have about myself, and you can borrow, I want you to adopt, to make your own, is I am changing the narrative. I'm changing the narrative. When someone says or highlights a way in which you're not like Black people, what does it mean? It means you are challenging the stereotype. There's been something in you, they've seen in you, or heard in you, perceived in you, that is like creating a dissonance between who they thought black people were, what they think we are, and who you are and what they're seeing. Yeah. So can you hear how actually the facts can be exactly the same, the words they use can be exactly the same, but you can change how you think about those words. You can decide that when someone says that to you, when they inflict that microaggression on you, what that is evidence, it's proof that you are changing the narrative. You're changing the narrative of what they think about you. You're changing the narrative of what they think about black people. I want you to stop for a minute and literally give yourself a second to think, I am changing the narrative. I'm changing people's perception of what it means to be black, to be a black person. When I think I'm changing the narrative, I feel so powerful. I am so empowered. I feel motivated to keep going, to actually show up bigger and better and more of who I am, not to hide and diminish and minimize, to be more. I feel motivated to lean in. I feel bolder. I feel validated. I feel like, I was going to say, I feel like it's working, but it's not that I've set out to change the narrative. It's just what I'm doing. That is who I am. But the key is I feel so powerful and I feel free. I feel free because I get to show up however I want, and that's going to cause people to question their opinions about me. You know, one of the strongest thoughts, or most powerful thoughts that I've carried around with me since a very young age, and it all came from having experienced just such an onslaught of these microaggressions and racist comments, is I get to change people's opinions about me. I love changing what people think about me. It's one of the reasons why I'm so confident walking into a room full of people who look different to me. Because I think, right, okay, let's see who I'm going to meet here today. Let's see what they're going to say. It almost amuses me to hear somebody come out with a statement like, you're not like a black person, normal black person at all. I think, yeah, I'm changing your perception of me. I'm changing the narrative about black people. It makes me so bold. It makes me so empowered. It makes me stronger. It makes me bigger. It makes me more motivated. And when I have those emotions, feeling powerful and bigger and motivated, how I show up is completely different than how I would show up if I felt this place is racist, they don't like black people, you can't get ahead if you're a black person, this culture is terrible, it needs to change, why is it always like this? You know, the thoughts that our brain offers us that naturally, understandably, we want to go to and dwell in when we experience a microaggression or form of racism. When we allow those thoughts, though, we're left smaller. We are left disempowered versus choosing a thought that is empowering, that changes everything, that makes the circumstances and the people who are speaking to you and the words that they say to you seem so small, and you so big, you so powerful, because you're changing a narrative. Like, that is huge. And so as a consequence of that, you get to lean in. You have the courage and the confidence to lean in, to be yourself. And the more you do that, the more you keep showing up, the more you continue to be yourself, right? In their face every day, being not like black people in inverted commas at all. The more that narrative changes, the more that narrative changes and the doors start to open and you start to get included and the opportunities start to come and the support starts to come in, the more you show up at your highest level from this place of feeling empowered and realizing how strong and powerful you are and the influence and impact you can have, the more everybody else starts to get the memo about who you are. Yeah, the more the circumstances around you start to bend and shape themselves to who you are, to how powerful you are. Yeah. So leaning in this way, being more, being bolder, stepping into your power, this creates that change. So yes, you can be an activist, and yes, you can be campaigning for the system to change and for people to change and for the world to be different and the culture to be better. And yes, do that. If that is your calling, do that. But I want you to never ever forget the power that you have personally to show up powerfully and be the change. Yeah. In changing the narrative, you be the change. You're still there. You're still in the organization. You are showing up. You're changing people's opinions about you. You are progressing. And in doing that, you're the change that you and I want to see. So how do you do that? Let's make this really practical. Like what do I want you to take away and start doing right now? You can literally have this as the way to do it, the process. This is what I teach you and the skills I teach you in Be the First. This is what you will learn to do that will help you to do this and get better and better at it until it becomes just who you are and what you do naturally in the face of any microaggression, in the face of racism, okay? So the first skill that you need in order for you to be empowered by a microaggression versus disempowered by it, the first thing is you've got to be able to separate the facts. Okay? Separate the facts of what happened or words that were said from your experience of it. And by your experience of it, I mean your thoughts about it and your emotions, like in response to it, like how you feel about it. Separate the facts. And how you know you've done this is you're able to literally say, these words were said. That was it. These words were said. That's separating the facts. Because everything else is your thoughts and your feelings. Okay? So number one is you've got to be able to separate the facts. Number two, the skill that you're going to need in order for you to step into this more empowered place is to process negative emotions. Now, I use the word process to describe what I want you to how I want you to treat your emotions. And it's something you'll learn in Be the First. It's the word I use. Process is the word I use to describe, I guess it's really like processing it. It's running it through, running your emotions through a process, okay? And the process is something I give you in Be the First. But what it amounts to is you allowing yourself to experience whatever comes up for you, whether it's shame, whether it's sadness, whether it's hurt, whether it's anger, frustration, any of whatever the emotions that come up for you when you've been exposed to a microaggression of this type, acknowledging them, recognizing them, allowing them, feeling them in your body so that they actually, I'm thinking, the moment I talk about passing through you, which has all sorts of weird connotations, but the processing of it is really just you recognizing that you feel terrible when something has happened and giving those feelings the recognition that they deserve, that they merit, that they want, that they need before they leave you alone, before you are free to then choose how to respond. So I call it recognizing and responding. That's what you're doing when you're processing the emotion. You're recognizing your negative emotions, like how sad or bad you feel about something, so that you are then free to respond from a place of, what do I want to say? To respond in a way that creates a result you want versus reacting from the emotion that has been triggered in you when you've experienced a microaggression. Okay? So it's the difference between a reaction and response. And the way we do that is by processing the emotion. So that's the second skill that you need. And then the third skill you need is you need to be able to just change your thought. Change your thought from, I can't succeed in this place is racist, any one of those thoughts. Change it from those negative thoughts, or thoughts rather, that produce negative emotions, and you just change it to a better thought, to a thought that empowers you, to a thought that serves you. Now, when you join Be the First, you get so skilled at this, you start to be able to just identify and find thoughts really easily for yourself. But in the beginning, I share my thoughts with you. I create this value bank of thoughts that I talked about this before in a podcast a few episodes ago, where I described it as this bank, and you already have like a deposit of these incredibly powerful, empowering thoughts. I give them to you. These are thoughts that I choose. Remember, I choose to think about myself. I could choose so many other thoughts, but those thoughts, like the thoughts that I perhaps at some time in my life have thought, but I recognize that they don't serve me at all. And so I have, over the period of time in which I have like been in a white world, progressing, succeeding, learning how to progress, learning how to be the highest version of myself in environments that weren't like built for me. Like, I have accumulated the most powerful thoughts through my own work, through my own coaching. Okay. And I've got these thoughts and I offer them to you. I already give you some to get started. And so the thought I want to offer to you today for you to take away, try it on, practice it, see how it feels, build your belief in it, is I am changing the narrative. I'm changing what it means to be Black in a white world. I'm changing the industry, whatever version of that you like. I just love, I'm changing the narrative. Okay, so the 3 skills that you need, I'm going to repeat those because I gave you quite a lot of detail and I don't want them to be lost. Number 1, you need to be able to separate out the facts from the experience. Number 2, you need to be able to process the emotion. And number 3, you need to be able to change your thoughts. That's it. All of this I teach you how to do in Be the First. And it is transformational. The facts outside of you, the circumstances outside of you don't need to change for you to become the highest version of yourself. And by the highest version, what I mean is for you to realize how powerful you are and show up to the challenges you face at work, to be able to navigate those at the highest level in a way that you just keep on progressing, in a way that makes you unstoppable. Because these skills, you learn these skills with me and Be the First. You practice these skills, you hone these skills, you will be unstoppable. You will be the first. You will keep being the first all the way to the top, which is what I want for you. So you're not like Black people at all. Why, thank you. You're welcome. That's what I want to say to somebody who says that to me. I am changing the narrative. I will show up bigger. I will show up better. I will show up louder. You will get more of me until that narrative changes. And like this, without having to adopt this sort of global mission of or global responsibility of I have to blaze a trail and I have to bring everyone along with me. You just showing up as who you are is you changing the narrative, and you changing the narrative is you changing the world. Microaggressions, like Black people, you're not like Black people at all, are just words. They do not have to harm you. You get to choose to let them empower you. And in this episode, I've showed you how to do it. All right. I hope you found that food for thought. If you are a mid to senior level Black lawyer and you want to progress within the industry, I will help you navigate being a Black lawyer in a white world. Join Be the First. Now, when will this be going out? End of September. The September intake has already closed. So what I want to encourage you to do is put your name on my waiting list, okay? For when I open doors again to let a new round of people into the group, okay? I'm going to include a link in the show notes or in the notes to this video so that you can go along and add your name to the waiting list so that when I open the doors, you are one of the first to hear, okay? Because it's only ever open for a limited period of time and for a limited number of people. But come and join Be the First, and I will teach you these lifelong skills of turning microaggressions that previously undermined you and disempowered you into evidence, proof, into thoughts, right, that empower you and have you showing up bigger than ever before so you can achieve your potential and keep progressing all the way to the top. That's it from me. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.